So this news literally just dropped minutes ago. It's a press release from Tulsi Gabbard's campaign, and it's a pretty big one. Now, there has been a lot of speculation as to whether or not Tulsi's views on the LGBTQ community should be held to a standard that we would have held her to, I guess, when she said it, when she was 21 years old. She has said and claimed to have evolved. She has a 100% voting record on all human rights and civil rights issues. And even after her apology, there are a lot of people who will still use that statement that she made from when she was 21 years old, still living under her father's roof, socially conservative, even though her father apologized and said he didn't even realize how much he had scarred Tulsi in that regard, and that he's more open now and has learned a lot from Tulsi in that when it comes to that issue. So this press release actually is re-fortifying what Tulsi herself has already told us, and it's almost a direct answer to the question that she received in the town hall, with CNN's town hall, which was Sunday at 8 p.m. So she received that question. It was basically a question that said, talking about conversion therapy and her record on on LGBTQ issues, and she was like, first of all, I didn't even know what conversion therapy was until recently. So, but this press release directly addresses that. So it was for immediate release, March 13th, 2019. So today, Representative Tulsi Gabbard introduces the Equality Act to prohibit LGBTQ discrimination. Washington, D.C. Representative Tulsi Gabbard, representative for the 2nd District of Hawaii, joined a bipartisan coalition of 238 colleagues in introducing the Equality Act, H.R. 5. The legislation would extend civil rights protections to the LGBTQ community by prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity in education, employment, housing, credit, and federal jury services, public accommodations, and the use of federal funds. Now, this is Tulsi's words. Too often the LGBTQ community still faces discrimination in the workplace, in education, or when trying to find a home, said Representative Tulsi Gabbard. It's long overdue that we extend civil rights protections to the LGBTQ community and ensure equal treatment for all Americans under the law, regardless of race, sexual orientation, gender, religion, disability, and national origin. The background. This is still the press release. Representative Tulsi Gabbard has co-sponsored and supported anti-discrimination legislation like the Fair and Equal Housing Act, Freedom from Discrimination and Credit Act, Juror Non-Discrimination Act, Student Non-Discrimination Act, Safe Schools Improvement Act, Do No Harm Act, the Therapeutic Fraud Prevention Act. Additionally, Representative Gabbard has advocated in support of the LGBTQ community serving in the United States Armed Services. She earned a 100% rating from the Human Rights Campaign during the 115th Congress, which was a Congress that was right before this one. So her record on human rights, or her positive record on human rights, is recent. And for more on the Congresswoman's work for fighting for civil rights and equity, click here. So basically, this legislation is actually groundbreaking. It's huge. Some people may see this as like, oh, okay, we're advocating for equity. What's for the LGBTQ community? It seems commonsensical, right? It seems like it's almost redundant. So as you all know by now, we did legalize gay marriage. And it was North Carolina Supreme Court legalized it, and then the Supreme Court upheld their findings. But the problem is that was just gay marriage. That was just marriage equality. It doesn't take into account all the other ways that people are discriminated against. Now, some people, that's ridiculous. We would never see anything like that in the community. That's actually not true. In fact, many of you probably recall North Carolina's HB2 bill. I mean, this bill wreaked havoc all through North Carolina. It was national and international news all over the country and around the world. Now, the reason why it was national and international news was because it was called the bathroom bill, right? And that's what the Republicans in North Carolina tried to make of it. Now, if you know anything about the Republicans in North Carolina, or Republicans in general, Democrats too, but mostly Republicans, this is what they're known for. They will write legislation, give it a name that has nothing to do with no, it actually does have something to do with it. It's just the total opposite of what it's actually about. So the name of the legislation, like the Patriot Act, there is nothing patriotic about spying on all Americans based on lies and made up nonsense, right? So that's just an example. No Child Left Behind Act, where you only get federal funding if your school does well. And so if your school was already doing well, guess who was getting all the federal funding? If your school was doing bad, guess who was getting none of the federal funding? And considering that property taxes are paying 93% of all education in the country, poorer neighborhoods still did bad. And so children were indeed left behind. Once again, never really lives up to the title. There was a bill in North Carolina specifically that said it was the No Discrimination in the Justice System Act or something like that. And the bill, I'm not even joking. The bill literally was to allow North Carolina court systems to discriminate. That was literally what the bill was, and it passed. It passed. So this bathroom bill was deceptive. It was partially about the bathrooms. But what was worse was the fact that it actually gave jurisdiction to employers to legally discriminate against the LGBTQ community. Every single one of the letters. Lesbians, gay people, transsexuals, bisexuals, queer. If they even felt like you were a little funny to them, then they were going to be legally able to discriminate against you. And the truth of the matter is, it legalized discrimination against race too. But the thing is, if I was discriminated against because of my race, I am currently protected under the civil rights legislation that Tulsi's press release is referring to. And I think that's an important distinction to make. But if I was black and gay, maybe they fired me for being gay, but because I'm black, I'm not gay. But if I was, they would be able to fire me for being gay, and because I'm black, I'd be able to protect myself. However, if you were fired for being gay and you were white per se, then you'd be screwed. There would be no fighting it. You could fight it, but you wouldn't be able, your attorney would not be able to argue this in front of the federal courts. They would not be able to argue the civil rights legislation, the Civil Rights Act in federal court. So if you were discriminated against in the housing market, which does happen, redlining, hello, ding, ding, ding. If you were discriminated against in the housing market, if maybe you're in the South and they don't want no queers and no steers in my neighborhoods. Well, right now, legally, they can do that. This legislation passes. No, they can't. You catch my drift? This is revolutionary. The LGBTQ community we're now finding out that they are a more dominant sect of the population than previously believed, because people are more comfortable coming out, because we live in a time period where they are more accepted. And that's great. Now we need our laws to catch up. If this legislation was in place and passed and wrote into law, then guess what happens? North Carolina's HB2 bill never happens. Catch my drift. They would not be able to use the premise of, oh, we're worried about the trans community, because they would be included. They would be included, the LGBTQ community, because of the historic trauma that they have faced, deserves this. They really do. Being a person, that's one of the reasons I get mad at my fellow black friends who used to rail it, and they don't do it anymore because they kind of realize the hypocrisy of it. But I used to get mad as hell at my black friends who would make gay slurs or say homophobic things and would react a certain way to a gay person in their vicinity. And I'm like, bro, really? Like, first of all, why are you worried about what's going on in somebody else's bedroom? I don't really care about that. Like, I do not care. I don't care what's going on in my straight friends' bedrooms, nor do I. So why would I care about what's going on in my gay friend's bedroom? I don't care. It's not me. Okay. I'm more worried about what's going on in my bedroom. And when I'm in the drought, that's all I'm worried about is what's not going on in my bedroom. Catch my drift. But, but in all seriousness, for Black people, we know what it's like to be discriminated against, what it's like to be discriminated against based off of existing in our skin. We do. So why would we then participate in that type of just egregious behavior, that type of hypocritical behavior? The civil rights legislation should absolutely be extended to the LGBTQ community. And I'm extremely grateful that Tulsi is once again proving that she is on the right side of history and will continue to be that, putting her money where her mouth is. Once again, there have been, I think, 3 now legislators who are putting their money where their mouth is, even while they're running. Now, Bernie has introduced legislation while he's been campaigning. Tulsi has introduced legislation. I think this is her second piece of legislation that she's introduced. Actually, I think it's her third. I actually think it's her third. I think she passed something about Yemen, or co-sponsored something about Yemen, co-sponsored this, and co-sponsored the reparations legislation. So Bernie has introduced legislation as well, one of them being Yemen, and one other thing, I can't remember what it is right now. Elizabeth Warren, I believe, has even introduced something to combat Wall Street as usual. Probably not to hold anybody accountable, though, because we know how Liz feels about accountability for the Wall Street people she's constantly wagging her finger at. But that's a different discussion. At least she introduced something, right? At least she introduced something. And so that begs the question, other legislators who are running, what are you doing in the meantime? Are you going to stop working for us the moment politics become an issue? You get what I'm saying? And at least we can say that, I'm not a fan of Elizabeth Warren, but at least I can say that she will introduce legislation and she will continue to work. Just like Tulsi Gabbard and just like Bernie Sanders. Now, as far as this legislation is concerned with Tulsi, this answers a question a lot of people have been wondering. Okay? A lot of progressive journalists have been curious about this. And I want to be clear about something. I want to see this covered. I want to see this covered. We've been talking about it. We've been asking about it. She's already answered the question 150,000 times over. Now she has a press release. Once again, even though she had a 100% voting record before, people act like that didn't exist. So now, once again, she is literally making this a protected class under the Civil Rights Act. That is huge. And it needs to be covered. It needs to be covered the right way. So when you see it being covered by other journalists, please share. Post a link in the comments so other people can see the different ways that people have covered this, because the most important thing about this type of press release is that it gets out to everybody, because the truth is important. And this takes away a talking point from the establishment that we knew wasn't true. We knew that she didn't still have disdain towards the LGBTQ community. We knew that. But we still have to make sure that the people who don't know who she is understands this. And the way we do that is when this press release goes out and when this video gets put out, you share it everywhere. Then when other people's videos go out, you share it everywhere. And let's get the truth out there for the people to decide, and for the people to see, hint, hint, the people who haven't been covering Tulsi, TYT, TYT. Oh man, I got this really bad cough. Ignore that. More than anything else, always remember, people, find your balance. Peace. Thank you for watching that segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. Help us reach our goal of 500 patrons. You can do so by donating as little as $1 by clicking on the Patreon link in the description below. Don't forget, join us on Roku and JustNForm. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook as well. And remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.